There was a famous novel, I think it was the 18th century, I think it was Dumas, the same one who wrote Count of Monte Cristo and all of those other Cavalier novels. It was called The Man in the Iron Mask. Anyone ever hear this? And in those days, one of the punishments that they would do is to fit this iron mask over your entire head and lock it on for life. And this guy had to live inside this iron mask. Just enough room to put a little food in, but you never see his face, etc. Well, that's really what the ego is, isn't it? And how many of us have sentenced ourselves to living a life inside that iron mask? And yet the power to come out of that mask is with us. We can free ourselves from that horrendous self-punishment that we have placed upon ourselves. But to do that, we have to realize we have the power to take off the mask. And some of us are afraid, well, it's been on so long, I have no idea what's under it. I think it's too ugly to look at. You see, I think that's the real fear that people have. They don't realize that underneath that mask is God. And this is why this is exactly what every religion teaches, but they teach it in a concretized third-person way. So fundamentalist Christians believe that if you only believe in Jesus, you'll be saved. And Hindus believe if you only believe in Krishna, you'll be saved. And Buddhists, if you believe on Buddha, you'll be saved, etc., etc. But what they don't add is that you have to believe that you are the Christ, you are Krishna, you are the manifestation of God. Not just believe that there's somebody else who's going to come and take that mask off from you one day. No, you have to recognize it. And it used to be taught. This is the difference between the exoteric religion and the esoteric. But in the esoteric, it's quite clearly stated that God became man, that man would become God. And so God has become man and woman in the form of each of you. Each one of you is Christ. Each one of you is Krishna. Each one of you is the goddess. Each one of you is the supreme light. And when you realize you are the light, the mask will melt away. That's what tapasya is. That's what being on fire is. It's realizing you are the light that burns away all the masks and all the suffering and all the illusions and all the falseness of the mind of the ego. And you have the power to burn that ego mask to a crisp at any moment. Just by having faith that you are the supreme consciousness. And that's why the story of history that is told in every religion is also the same. Although some realize more of the circularity of it and some understand more about the ultimate destiny. But it is always said that time has these three parts: the creation, the revelation, and the redemption. This is pure Judaism. And the Ashkenazi Jews call this Heilsgeschichte. The German Jews, of course, the same Heil as in Heil Hitler, right? Heilsgeschichte means history that is redemptive. It is redemptive because history leads to that moment of our ultimate redemption. That means the end of Kali Yuga and the beginning of the new Sat Yoga. It's there in Judaism, it's there in Christianity, it's there in all of the religions. We just have to see that it's there and recognize that it pertains to us not to someone else. And we're not waiting for some Messiah to come somewhere else, or some Mahdi, or some Maitreya, or some being out there. But you must realize you are that being. And that's what we're doing in every meditation, is realizing that I am that. I am Shiva. I am liberation itself. It is that faith and recognition of the power of God that you are that frees you, and nothing else. That is what Shakti emerges from. But you must be fearless enough to take off that mask, to let it melt away, and discover who you are underneath it, deep within. And that's why when Ganapati Shastri came to Ramana and asked him, what is tapasya? He said, when you make the sound of the mantra or you have a thought, you must go all the way to the root, to the very source of the I that is thinking that thought or speaking that mantra. Don't stop short. Just because your vocal cords are singing doesn't mean that you are the vocal cords. Who is behind the singing and the thinking is pure awareness. Don't stop short of that. And then abide in that as that pure awareness. That is the true self. And that is where the power comes from. And it is not said for nothing that God is almighty. God is almighty, and you are that almighty God. But the might that is referred to is the might, the power to destroy the illusion of the ego. And once the illusion of the ego is destroyed, all other evil is destroyed along with it. And the supreme goodness that then emerges into the world is you, as the light, as pure love, as pure generosity, as pure wisdom. And what you realize is that who you are, what you mean by that word, I, and you, and we, is all of us together as one being. This whole world is one being, one intelligence. And then there is complete liberation. And that is when the redemption occurs. The revelation is that I am God, and the redemption is that the world itself is the manifestation of God. Then all is freed from the iron mask. The creation is really the concealment. This is what Kashmir Shaivism talks about. It says God conceals himself. Shiva conceals himself as the world. And then gradually, at some point at the end of Kali Yuga, reveals through each being in that world, I am Shiva. There is nothing that is not Shiva. I am that. And then the redemption is that all of us are that. And this is the moment of both revelation and redemption. They come together. And of new creation. All three of them will take place simultaneously. And so this is the most auspicious time in the entire Heilsgeschichte, in the entire history of humanity. This is the most incredible, beautiful moment. And yet, ironically, it appears at the moment of the worst brutality, disaster, oppression, poverty, climate change, you name it. Every possible negative thing that could happen is happening now. And yet that is all part of the paradox of this being the most auspicious and beautiful moment that has ever been. And we must recognize that beautiful sense of humor of God, to place the divine light in the heart of darkness, so that that light will emerge and illuminate the darkness and reveal it all, even Satan as God. Because even the ego, even that mask, is part of God in disguise. And when it melts, it becomes divine light. So let it melt and let the light shine. The thicker the mask, the more light that there is when it is melted. But this is the moment to do it. Don't wait until it is done to you or for you by fate. But recognize your power to liberate yourself and the world. You are the Messiah. You are the Great One, the Liberator. And it doesn't require belief, it requires realization. Belief is not nearly enough. Otherwise, all of those religious fundamentalists of every religion would be liberated, but they're not, because they have misunderstood and placed it somewhere else. There cannot be duality. For redemption, there must be the non-duality. There must be no distance between the I and the God that the I seeks, until you realize that you are what you are seeking. You will not find that. But in the moment that the two meet, subject and object become one, then the spark is ignited that burns away all illusion. So every time we meditate, we get closer and closer to that source. And the fire gets hotter, and we get more liberated, more accessible to the redemption that is calling us. And so I hope that this retreat has been for you an opportunity to realize the God self that you are, and that you do feel somewhat closer, somewhat more empowered, and that you have the full recognition that you are that now and in every moment, and that you have the power to choose to achieve your full redemption without waiting, without even having to pray for it or beg for it or prostrate before any idols, because you are it. So I wish you the blessing of bringing about your own self-redemption and the redemption of this dream world that we all share. As soon as you choose to realize who you are.